Good morning. It's 9 o'clock here Friday morning in Ely, Minnesota. My name is Lori Schmidt. I'm the Wolf Curator here. So I'd like to welcome you to the Friday update on the pack. And let's start with the exhibit pack. So you are currently seeing our main enclosure, and on the far right is Bolts. He is an 8-year-old a Great Plains subspecies of wolf. We have the two Arctics that are 3-year-olds. They will be 4 on May 2nd. That is Axel and Grayson. And then Denali, our soon-to-be 12-year-old Northwestern subspecies. He was around this morning, but he is the oldest and he is the wisest. And I suspect he is probably up in the woods, staying out of the rain. There he is. I am so happy we invested in pan, tilt, zoom cameras that I can zoom in on Big D up there in the woods. So we have a nice conifer cover up in the woods. So we've got red pine, we've got white pine that have some pretty long elongated branching patterns that allow for an area of the exhibit to be dry. We do see, and I'm just gonna back up for a second and turn another mic off because we have a lot of crunching going on in the background here. Thank you. So that was the Wolf Care staff. We have the outdoor area mic'd so that we can hear what's going on. Obviously, we always want to know what's up with our wolves. And so just had a little bit of a crunchy sound coming from the outdoors because of the rain on top of ice, on top of crystallized snow. We are expected to get about a ½ inch of rain, turning to freezing rain and turning to snow by, let's say, last I saw about 3 o'clock. There's a cold front coming in. We have a circumstance going on right now where a lot of our snow is what we call crusted, or kind of crusted in the morning. And then we call it the bottom falling out of the snow. That's kind of the phrase for those of us who snowshoe through this, in that you walk on it and you start to just sink instantly. And you punch hole in. That's really hard on Denali. He's got old hips. Denali is the oldest wolf we've ever managed in an exhibit, meaning by now he's typically retired. But at this time, he's still hanging with the pack, and that's kind of where we're at. So our format today, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can. I've asked Leanne and Kelly, the assistant curators, are working right now with Gryzor. So I'm going to switch back and forth. They're in the pack holding area. Gryzor just had his breakfast. He had 3 pounds of, let's see, today he had bone dust. He rotates between bone dust, pork, beef. We had about 200 pounds of beef donated recently from someone in Grand Rapids, Minnesota, and he's doing pretty well. We're actually going to back him off of that 3 pounds. That's a little bit, it's a winter diet for him to have 3 pounds of meat every day. So we're going to back him off, and actually we're going to have Kelly and Leanne actually weigh him. So I've got a camera poised for weights in the Wolf Care Center. This is actually where the pups would be if they were being raised. I think I featured this in a YouTube about a month ago. We had a contractor come in and provide a floor treatment that is bacteria resistant, that's easy to clean. Before, it was just concrete, and we had a lot of troubles with wolves that are coming out of anesthesia, as we dealt with so many surgeries with Luna and Aiden. Every time they came out of drug, it was just slippery. They couldn't get their footing. So we invested in a good floor covering that's got a kind of a grit to it. And you'll see Gryzor walk in, even with wet paws, have pretty good traction. So the other thing I have the Wolf Care staff working on this morning, and again, just to reiterate, we are managing on a smaller scale. We are managing only right now 4 staff that are allowed to be here. Krista Harrington, the facilities manager here, the Ely Interpretive Center director, Leanne Martin and Kelly Godfrey, who are the assistant curators, and then myself. And so typically we don't overlap, meaning Krista and I work Monday through Wednesday, and then Kelly and Leanne work the Thursday through Sunday. I am overlapping here today because I am doing this, obviously, and this is where we broadcast from. So we're keeping our 6-foot distance. I'm wearing a bandana. Took my body temp. I was 96.8 this morning. Actually, I'm not even certain that that's normal, but you know, was out in the rain quite a bit this morning. So we're having Kelly and Leanne working on, we're going to open this fence up here. And so what this is a gate that if I'm in the exhibit pack, sorry, I got to check my cameras. This is the gate. They're working on the back side of this gate. What we're going to try to do is we're going to try to open that up and see if Gryzor can have some face-to-face over here. We had been working with Gryzor and having Gryzor have the pack coming into this pack holding area to be face-to-face with Gryzor. But since we've had so much snow this year, we had some banks pretty high, and the retirement is not built for young guys, meaning it was built for old timers and pups. So we don't want to have wolves that are young and spry like Axel and Grayson and Bolts in there, climb on a snowbank. Next thing you know, they're on our roof. And, you know, that's a whole different type of a scenario. You know, Fiddler on the Roof is a great musical, but Wolf on the Roof, that's not something I want to star in. So we are in a circumstance right now where we're opening this gate up. We're going to see if Gryzor wants to have face-to-face contact. So what you were witnessing is, sorry, I got my cameras wrong, is Leanne and Kelly have to make that path so Gryzor's not climbing on this high snowbank. They're packing it down, they're making it, you know, Gryzor proof, and they're going to open up this this door, and they've got to do some securing of it. We actually had a circumstance, this was several years ago, but Lakota got pulled through this gate. Lakota was one of our last retirees. She lived by herself. We let her have face-to-face contact. And when Aiden and Denali were a pup, well, they actually was in the fall, so it was probably October when it happened. I think Denali was the big instigator of it. They actually grabbed her tail and pulled and broke this gate, and they reintroduced Lakota back into the pack. And the interesting thing was Lakota started pair bonding with Shadow, the dominant male at the time. So she was separated from the pack for her health, but psychologically, boys, she liked being back in the pack. And so we ended up having to break the news to her that she had to go back into retirement. But anyways, that happened in the October of 2008. So you can see what's happening here. This is a great example of neophobia, meaning that, okay, something's different, something's new, what's happening? And you see the different response. Boy, the Arctics 2016 pups, they don't like it. And this is really huge to our pup socialization. They don't like something new going on. Bolts, he's like, hey, bring it on. I don't care. And the weird thing about it was Bolts was an older pup when we got him. So we would have thought that Bolts had less, you know, socialization because he was older. And it's interesting, Bolts is more tolerant of things on our exhibit. We actually even had the skid steer in when we were doing the rock work around the back of the den. He was hanging out with them while the Arctics were just pacing up in the upper part of the enclosure. So trying to figure these guys out psychologically is hard. That's why when we do pups, it's very, very dedicated to understanding what we need to do when they're pups, because we live with it for the rest of their lives. And that can be like Gryzor, 16 years. So what's happening, Kelly is now putting a safety chain around this gate so that we don't have a circumstance where that can be pulled up. And you see that latch there, that's all that's holding it. We know that they can break that latch, and all of our gates are chained. That's a standard safety protocol for us. So basically what's going to happen, like I said, they're going to swing that gate open. Geez, you think I get it right. Gryzor is already there. So Gryzor's like, yeah, this is cool. This works for me. I can come in here, and we'll see. The snow's still a little bit much for him. That's obviously a concern that I have, is post hole in it, and seeing if that works to be able to, we're not going to have the gate, we're having the gate swing in and then try to latch it. You can see that there's just a short little face-to-face that they can have. And that's what we're hoping to give Gryzor. It's not social distancing, it's not 6 feet, but you know, I'm not worried about at this point, there's nothing that they can catch from each other. They're all vaccinated. That's one of the other benefits. So I'm going to take it from a different angle, and it's Bolts who's doing the greeting. So that's kind of cool. So this is live. We had not done it before. I've been thinking about this for the last 10 days. How am I going to make this happen? It looks like Gryzor likes it. Yeah, so Kelly just came in and Gryzor said, looks like, Gryzor said, so Kelly said, it looks like Gryzor likes it. There's Big D. This is my concern. Denali had issues with Gryzor. Denali is the reason why Gryzor's retired because of Gryzor's behavior, but it was Denali who was the instigator of some of that behavioral problems. So I want to know how those two are getting along, because I can't trust that they could ever be together in retirement based on their history. So at the very least, what I want to do is, if Denali becomes retired, I want them to share a fence line and not cause stress. So like I said, you're seeing some activity here. Excitement can yield dominance. Excitement is typically identified by T1 tails up in the air. That's Grayson doing a run along the fence line. Axel's tail is pretty high. They're posturing, and this is not a happy, I mean, you know, it's excitement, but excitement isn't always good in the wolf world. So this is something that we're going to monitor. Obviously, we're not going to let this happen overnight, but while staff are here, we're going to let Gryzor have that opportunity. But it actually is ramping up the pack. You can see change makes wolves think differently. These are not dogs. Even dogs don't like change. And many dog owners are probably wondering, why is my my pack leader, my human, never leaving the house anymore? Some dogs are happy about it. Some dogs want the couch back, So basically, you're seeing a little bit of ears prick forward on Denali. I'm going to switch back and, I'm going to switch back and see what Gryzor is doing. Actually, that's just Leanne right now. Gryzor's in the kennel here, so he's kind of coming and going. So Gryzor is very relaxed about it. He's got what we call a T3 tail. The tail is dropped. The tail is relaxed. He's not a tuck tail. If Gryzor had a tuck tail, I would stop this immediately. Obviously, we got to do some more snow work. Hoping this rain will cut it. One of the other things too is you might notice a lot of work around here. We are very diligent about trying to get some of these kennels and some of these gate areas protected with roof lines so that these older animals can maneuver and not be in the elements, not be in the rain, not be in the ice. And that's something that we work really, really hard on, especially for Gryzor. We've done a tremendous job of trying to get that done. We're not quite done yet, but so important for a wolf who had an ACL tear years ago because of that. So you can see here, face to face. Again, let me go back to the, geez Louise. There's the face pattern from this side. So so camera 3, remind myself, that's the Wolf Care Center. So you can still see Gryzor kind of just trying to get the best angle there. He's coming right up. Denali's got a little bit of a tail wag, so that's good. But again, we need Gryzor to have some stimuli. We're cutting back on Wolf Care staff from the standpoint of who's hanging around here. I'm going to turn the mics back on, so in case we hear some vocalization. There we go, mics are back on. So I want to listen to that growling. So a little bit of intimidation with Bolts behind, with them coming behind. It's interesting that Bolts is the longest, the first agreed and the longest. Bolts and Gryzor have never physically met. Same with Axel and Grayson never physically met Gryzor, because Gryzor was retired in 2011. Bolts was born in 2012, and the Arctics were born in 2016. So they've never had a physical relationship. Denali and Gryzor have a physical relationship. So you can see that excitement. There's a ride up there from Axel getting a little bit excited. Denali takes it in stride, wagging his tail. Again, not concerned about these Axel ride-ups. Everybody gets them. And unfortunately, I'm in that same boat. I get Axel write-ups as well. He just gets so excited to see the Wolf Care staff. So the other thing to protect Gryzor, just so you know, he cannot be nose to nose. There's a pup panel right there, a pup panel. And let me go to camera 2 and show you that. This is a wood frame. It has hardware cloth. Hardware cloth is very fine mesh. It's about maybe 1/4 inch in size. And that hardware cloth prevents his nose from coming through. They can't grab him. They can't do anything. That pup panel is about 4 feet tall. And the other thing I want to get these guys used to, because Axel and Grace have never seen this kind of scenario, this is where the pups would be, and they would have that face-to-face contact. Very, very important that these adult wolves see these pups on a regular basis, especially at least that last month coming into the pup introduction. They got to have face-to-face 24/7 seeing those pups so that they can integrate them. So that's the perspective from Gryzor. You can see him walking over. This is good stimuli for a 16-year-old wolf. The biggest challenge I have with Gryzor, he's not on any medical treatments. He's not on any drugs. He takes turmeric every day for his joints. He takes a vitamin B supplement. He takes durlactin, which is a milk protein. He takes dasaquin, which is a joint supplement. Other than that, he's not on any meds. Milk thistle for his liver values. But I worry about his cognitive dysfunction. Canine cognitive dysfunction is kind of like an Alzheimer's for canines, and I want to make sure he's stimulated. His vision is going a little bit, so I really want to make sure that these paths are protected. That's why I'm working so hard on these roof lines for him to make sure everything's kind of covered so he's got space where he can walk. You guys can want to go ahead and start weighing him? Sure. I'll watch for him to come in the exhibit. He seems like he's okay with the pack. Good deal. So they're going to bring him in and weigh him. And while we're moving that transition over, I'm going to go back to camera 3. Now I'm on the right camera. This is where they're going to open up this wolf care center, and that's the scale that we use for all wolves. So Gryzor needs to have his weight because we always have an issue. If you followed us on Luna's webinar, where we did a Life and Legacy of Luna, we went through the necropsy report. The U of M talked to us again about our older animals being in that high body mass index for obesity. We don't see it with the young ones. You know, of course, the young ones are running around, they're active, but as soon as they get into retirement, again, obviously restricted movement, maybe restriction of age. I'm not really sure if it's metabolic. Again, even with Luna, we cut her back to 1 pound of meat a day, which is bottom minimum for wolves to consume. And you know, they don't have that feast and famine diet like the exhibit pack, meaning the exhibit pack we feed on twice a week, where they're allowed to gorge in their natural patterns of eating, and then they go 4 days without feeding. And that seems to be how wolves function. So maybe there's something to be fed about feeding every day. You know, again, we have a lot more metabolic work to do. We finally hooked up with a lab here in Ely that can do metabolic testing for us, can do cortisol, stress hormone testing, and that helps us make better management decisions. It helps us, you know, again, is Bolt's too stressed? This winter, we had a heck of a time with him self-isolating because of dominance from Axel. He got so intimidated. It would be so nice if we could do a gum swab or a saliva swab and look at his cortisol levels at a given time and say, yeah, he's ramping up. He's really stressed. Let's try to mitigate that. So that's some of the things that I look for and try to manage a little bit differently. So like I said, they're opening up this area here. This is the Wolf Care Center. And so Gryzor is going to have access to come in. What they're going to try to do is put him on the scale. Well, he's going to go on the scale. And so what we do is peanut butter. Sometimes peanut butter, they will scent roll. So we always have to make sure that we don't put too much on. So he gets a little bit of peanut butter. And then on the other thing that Leanne has there is venison cakes. And this is something that we get on Amazon. It's on our Amazon wish list. And the venison cakes actually allow us to bribe them, but make a little bit of a crumble on top of that. And he's going to try to come in. And again, his sensory abilities are pretty good. On Monday, he found a piece of chicken that we stashed and then kind of ate it. So we're going to try to get him to stand on the scale. And he needs all 4 feet on the scale. Again, he's got wet paws and his traction's really good. So we're really happy with what's going on here as far as his movement. And I'm not certain that he's found the peanut butter yet. Oh, yep, there he has. So now the staff need to kind of, and these guys are new to this, not Gryzor. Gryzor's been weighed 100 times, but the Wolf Care staff are relatively new to this. So Leanne, it's hard for me to communicate with her now because she's kind of doing this on her own without my advice. But normally what I do is I stand on the side of the scale and block it, not in front of the camera, but that's okay. These are all learning tools. There we go. We got to get all 4 of his feet on that scale. And this is, there we go. And see if he will come and put his feet on the scale. So while we're doing that, I'm going to answer some questions and make sure that I kind of identify things. So there's a question about wondering about dominance in the pack leaders. The most dominant doesn't mean pack leader. Is the pack leaders chosen when there's a female in the pack? Do they choose the male pack leader? Yes, I would say I agree that we have had more dominant, aggressive wolves that were not pack leaders. The pack leader, I honestly believe they're born. I just think of the pups that we've had, the Gryzor, the Shadow, the Aiden, the Mackenzie, and I think about all those pups. And I think really what is, the trait that makes a pack leader. And I think when I think back of all those pup sessions, and I think I saw it when they were pups. And so the question is, when there's a female in the pack, do they choose the male pack leader? Maya not only chose the pack leader, but reminded him that she was in charge of. So Maya kind of selected Aiden after Shadow was retired and kind of got that pattern. There we go. Bingo. We have a weight. And Kelly's monitoring the screen there. We do that a couple of times so we get an average, and I'll have those guys come in and tell me what that is. So one of the things too about pack leadership is that, I think it's important to reference the word dominance and domineering. I see a lot of the dog world that thinks dominance is about alpha status. And I know Dave Meach has published alpha word in his 1970 book. And then obviously on our website, we have Dave reviewing that and saying, no, that's not right. It's family groups, etc. I want to go one step farther and say, it's not about domineering. It's not about power. Dominance, and the best pack leaders I saw sometimes stepped away. And I'm going to share something with you as I go through my desktop here. And I guess I have 90 things on my screen here. So let me go to my desktop for a second. I want to share something with you. I grabbed it yesterday, thinking about this, but pack leadership dominance is about tolerances. This is Gryzor when he was obnoxious yearling. This was in 2005. He was born in 2004. This is Shadow, our pack leader. And this is what we call avert gaze. Gryzor's, he's doing a yawn here. And again, yawn doesn't mean he's tired. Yawn could mean stress. It could mean a little conflict. I'm looking at Gryzor's ears. His ears are pricked and facing kind of forward. So he's intent. Shadow's ears are pricked, but turned sideways. So he's not as comfortable with this. And then I go to the next picture, and this is Gryzor doing a classic yearling. I'm not going to listen to you. You don't own me. You don't need to tell me what to do. And what does Shadow do? He just turns his head another ½ inch and looks away and says, you know what? This too will pass. I'm not going to engage with you. I'm not going to interact with you. And then the next sequence is Gryzor startled that the pack leader didn't engage, and Shadow turning his head and approaching him. And now his ears are not pricked, but flat in kind of a submissive posture, saying, you know what? We're all good. And so that's our interpretation of this behavior. But what it means to me, and it goes back to that question, is do we in fact have a leader who typically pushes the other wolves in a subordinate posture? No. In other words, they are not domineering, but dominance is again about this idea that you can be in charge without having to show that power. And I think that's the important message that these wolves have taught us. So that's an answer to that. Thank you, guys. Looks like he did well. What's his weight?
He didn't too bad. We had 103, but I don't think that's quite right. We got him almost on.
Okay. So 103, and they don't think it was a good weight, so you want to try it again? Yep.
Again. Yeah.
He was 125, so if he's 103, that's a significant issue. They're going to try it again. I think one of the other things that is important to recognize wolf care is nothing without patience. And so, like I said, Gryzor willingly comes into the building. Now that's because the door is open. If we were to close that door on him and lock him in, he would be a little panicked. But because he's willingly comes on in that door, comes on that scale. And again, in this case, he's going to try to lead his foot forward. So he gets all 4 feet on that scale so we can get a sound weight on him. One more foot, up. So patience is what we do. So I'm going to switch back to the other pack and just kind of see for a minute what's going on there in the other pack while they're trying to get him weighed. And they'll keep me posted on what's going on as far as weights. And so, again, so grateful we have a pan tilt Zoom. Yesterday, I happened to be working here at the computer and I was able to kind of focus. And they are hanging up in the woods here. So yesterday I had a view that was a little bit farther up in the woods. And you can see here that ground is thawed. It's darkness. Again, just reiterating why we do a lot of dark wood around here is because darkness absorbs heat. And so that's going to be a heat generating place for them rather than the icicles that we have just about everywhere else. The work is going to get significantly difficult here in the next couple of weeks, especially since we had to cancel the Working for Wolves crew, where we always had a tremendous crew that would come in April and help us with this. But the next task for wolf care is we need to get this hay out of here. This hay in this wet condition and warm temperatures is going to start to mold. Mold creates respiratory problems, and we all know how respiratory issues are a problem. And so you'll see wolf care staff, Kelly, basically it's Kelly, Leanne, and I in the upcoming 3 weeks. We're going to start every time we can get in there and get a top layer off. We'll get that hay out of there. And then we got to ice below it. We're going to have to let that ice thaw and get another layer out of there, another layer, and then haul it off site, because that's obviously something that we don't want our wolves to lie in. The other thing we have to wait for is this pile of snow to melt. This was from the roof. Earlier this winter, we had to shovel the roof because in northern Minnesota, if you don't shovel your roofs, as last week's Friday feature saw, we had a slide. And some of the roofs, we build very, very heavy post beam roofs that are built into concrete that are along our fences in the wolf care side. And so we're pretty safe about roof integrity, but the building is not as safe. And so we have to have the roof shoveled off because the building construction several years ago, we had part of the building rafters actually crack. And so the roof gets shoveled, and that's this adjoining roof line. And I'm going to just pan over. This is the exhibit where normally people would come to see the wolves. And this roof line here gets shoveled. Now, obviously, when we shovel the roof line, if you go back to a YouTube I had earlier this year, the snow was up to the roof line when it came off the roof. So we had a bobcat come in, skid steer, and dump all that snow into the pond. And that's what this is, waiting to melt. And that pond melt will take a while. We are supposed to get 40 degrees on Sunday, which is warm, but not enough to melt this much snow. The next step that we have to do is we have to get this pump housing back in, get the pond running. These are all things that are independent, whether we're open to the public or not. These are things that are animal health issues. So we have to get, again, the straw out for mold. We have to get the water running for temperature to cool themselves. We have to get the filter systems running to treat the algae. So these are all wolf health issues that are necessary for us to do. So I've got a couple of questions here. There's a question about, Tony asked, how frequently does the Wolf Center work with indigenous people like the Ojibwe or the Sami of Scandinavia? What I'm going to do, Tony, again, we do have some cooperation, programming cooperation with the local Ojibwe. I work personally with the 1854 Treaty Authority here in northern Minnesota. So I'm going to ask Tony if you could email me directly. One thing I know last week I said that I was going to provide some resources for you. I did find some great resources on dire wolves. I do not keep the emails of these free events, so I have no way of emailing it to you. So I'm going to ask if you could email me personally. I'd be happy to share with you some of that information and then be able to, again, return the focus onto the pack here. So I don't want to discount your question, but I want to make sure that I get you accurate information. So yes, so Shannon's watching. We miss you, Shannon. Shannon Barber-Meyer is from the USGS project. She normally is wolf care here on Wednesdays. And so she's been off since we've done this self-imposed quarantine here. And yeah, we, again, this is the kind of things that wake me up at 3 in the morning. You know, how will I make Gryzor's life better? Well, you know, I can make Gryzor's life better by letting him stare at the pack for a while. You know, when they're kind of excited, as long as it doesn't ramp up the pack. I want to, again, get Gryzor used to seeing Denali face-to-face in case Denali has to be retired. And I want to give Gryzor something to think about. You know, when you're living by yourself, a lot of people now are wondering, you know, he doesn't have FaceTime. He doesn't have Google Hangout. So we needed a way. And there's Grayson Puppy. Grayson Puppy, he's going to be 3, but I still call him my Grayson Pup. I'm very excited about Grayson, you know, coming to form as an adult here and taking leadership, taking ownership. And if that, you know, happens to be pups, that's great. If it's Gryzor, that's great. You know, having those kind of connections are important. Gryzor, again, is a wolf that is pretty easygoing. He's not a posturing kind of thing. And I say that, you know, even though I know that he and Denali had conflicts in 2011, the conflicts that he and Denali had were because I took Shadow out as the pack leader. I did not have a pack leader that came into, you know, was ready to lead. I left that pack without a leadership, without a dominant pair. I suffered the consequences. Maya, the dominance, the chaos that ensued was real problematic. I'm worried because I'm seeing a little bit of that chaos right now without a dominant pair, to kind of keep things under order. We got a bunch of males running around, all pushing each other around. And so that's my biggest concern right now with his exhibit pack. So Grayson's tail is going up a little bit. So that's just a little posturing. Gryzor's coming over anyways and says, hey, you know, I'm greeting. Oh, that's excitement. That's not what I wanted to see. So that's why we're doing this now, so I can kind of watch. And that's excitement. Now, it did not affect Gryzor. Nope, Gryzor doesn't care. So as long as that excitement does not ramp up and redirect to bolts or create a scenario where these guys are stalking Gryzor, then that's important to me. So yeah, so this would never be something we'd leave. We would lock it back up, you know, when wolf care staff are not out in the facility. But even now, in this short period of time, you know, that's what, 32 minutes, Gryzor's got some stimuli. You know, he's, you know, that's a good thing for our old timers. So a couple more questions that we have does the reduction of human trafficking right now seem to be affecting the pack or the Ely wildlife? Not necessarily. This time of the year, they are not prone to being that great about being up. So they're up today, first of all, because obviously I created stimuli, but usually by now, and one of the reasons why we delayed wolf care a little bit till like that 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock hour is that we typically see them going to bed around 11 o'clock. So if it's a day when it's 40 degrees, or we had some 50-degree days in the last week, they have got their full winter coat. And so it's different than if they're in July when it's 80 degrees. Well, when it's 80 degrees, you know what? You shed out your full winter coat. So it's not that bad. So believe it or not, summer heat is not as problematic as spring heat. Because spring heat, they're in their full, you know, undercoat, full guard hairs, you know, full undercoat. They don't shed their guard hairs, but really, really ramped up for winter. So a 50-degree day in March, they're sleeping. So they don't even notice that people aren't around because they're just doing what wolves do when you don't have sweat glands, is they're hanging out in the woods, trying to be as cool as possible, trying to avoid overheating. So that's typically where we find them. I have had people ask me to cut the vegetation so they can see up in the woods. You know, I don't cut any tree that is live. If it creates shade, it is valuable to me. If it creates birds landing and feeding and stimulating these wolves mentally, it is valuable to me. So I apologize that you can't see. But I won't take out a tree unless it's dead, because, you know, obviously dead trees, I worry about fire risk, worry about falling. But in this case, you know, there is that point that they're not always that available to see. So we're trying as best as we can. We know the explore.org contract, when that comes, and again, we're getting closer and closer. One of the other things why I had those guys open up that gate is that's the gate that our contractor needs to go through this fence line, and he needs to go through this gate. There's another gate right here. He's going to need to get back up here. That explore.org camera is going to be mounted right here. It is going to be a pan, tilt, zoom. So if you look at this angle that you're going to see up that wood line. You're going to see behind this front brush, which is fairly open because I maintain a fairly heavy, large diameter conifer cover that keeps a lot of the underbrush from growing up. And so you're going to see back behind there where those guys lay. And actually the den that they have dug at the top of the hill, there's about a 30-foot tunnel den. We always lose puppies in it. Not lose like, and we can't find them, but lose like they don't want to come out of it. And when we introduce puppies, but the reality is you're going to see that angle. The other side of the enclosure is going to be the second camera for explore.org. And I'll pan over there right now. And this is going to be mounted. That area's got a lot of snow yet, so we haven't finished that. But the other camera is going to be mounted right up here. It's going to see the back side of this den. They hang out a lot at this den site, you know, and then that's going to be a view. If you recall, last year we had a fundraiser to get this den site covered. There was two things that were seriously wrong with this den site. One is it flooded every spring. So we're monitoring that right now. So far, the construction we did last year stopped the den flooding. Now, we didn't finish it because we ran into winter. Last November, we got snow and we couldn't finish the den project. Now that we're not open to the public, we'll have that opportunity to finish that den and get that completed. But that was the first thing. And always, always, wolf health, wolf safety are our first priorities. The second priority was camera. It was the back of a septic tank. It wasn't very visually appealing for explore.org cameras. So now it's this beautiful slate den, and it's going to be fabulous for us to have that camera angle. And explore.org is going to have someone who monitors the camera and moves it around and finds the wolves. I try when I'm here to do that for you, but I just have so many things going on. I might, as you saw from my desktop, I might have 40 things on my desktop. You know, I don't always have time to watch the camera and move it. I try when they're howling to make sure the mics are on and to make sure that, you know, I move the camera, but I don't have that ability at all times. So that was a stalk from Axel. That's a little concerning. He's getting reinforcement from Grayson. That's not what I'm hoping for. You know, again, it's early, not saying that I can't do this, but I got to watch that kind of behavior. I'm going to just go back to number 2 camera. Nope, Gryzor's not in there, so I'm not sure what they were stalking. Could have been Leanne and Kelly, just because it was new. They're neophobic. Oh, there's Gryz. So he's walking through, and again, just can't, I seem like I say this over and over again. This is ice-free. This is, again, this roof line that we did this past fall. So amazing. I just, from a poor guy who slipped and tore his ACL and all this other ice, this whole walkway here is now just all ice-free. And that's just tremendous. I can't, I feel bad that he tore his ACL before, that we didn't have this, you know, for the many, many retired wolves that we had. So again, he goes all the way to the back habitat where he can get on top of the den and watch him. Oh, he did his little loop. I've got a little area there where he can go in. This is all snow-free. That's where he sleeps in the transition area. And then he made his little loop and came out. So I met my goal, which was to get Gryzor mentally stimulated. And I think we certainly did that. I think they're still trying to get him to weigh. And so patience is a virtue in wolf care. So Gryzor's like, yeah, I'm on to this. So again, I'm a more senior caretaker here. I've been here since 1989. I think sometimes Gryzor knows when he can take advantage of new staff. And, you know, and I think Gryzor's just toying with them. So that's good mentally too for him as well. So, all right. So let me get back to the pack. They're watching. And again, little bit of a stock there. That was Grace, and on the left, and that's Axel. Axel's definitely the more excited of the two. This is an interesting experiment. So Greta asked earlier, I talked about the 89 litter and how they got anxious about being viewed by people because they weren't at the center in winter. I also mentioned Gryzor having become more shy since retirement. Is there a risk that the current exhibit pack will become shy about visitors if you have to remain closed for a long period? And what about the new pups? That's an excellent question, Greta. We are certainly concerned about socialization. Obviously, this is uncharted territories. We don't know how long the stay in place order is going to be. We don't know how long the order of groups of 10 or less, or 10 or more. If there is a way that we can manage groups of 10 by appointment, I would certainly do that. I don't think it's the window is not the issue, because you know, the window, even on staff, we've been working hard to get all these auction items shipped. And so Kelly, Leanne, and Krista have been, you know, putting on 10,000 steps a day, walking back and forth from the classroom or where things are stored to the office, to where they're packaged and shipped. So just movement across the front of the exhibit happens. It will happen if staff come back in, because we're still, you know, providing services. But it's the walking up to the exhibit that is the freak pattern for these wolves when groups come up. So I don't know. Certainly, this is something that we all have to try to, you know, be patient, and we all have to try to monitor together. But I would envision, if we have a 10 and only order, that we rotate something, that we maybe try to do something that allows us to have small groups come and visit. You know, and that is something that, again, I worry about. Some of Gryzor's fear avoidance, though, is may not just because of people not being exposed as much. Gryzor's eyesight is failing. So I think when you are in a vulnerable state where you're going blind, I think his hearing's pretty good, because if you open a Ziploc bag anywhere near him, a Ziploc bag is where we have treats. He hears it. He knows. His sense of smell is pretty good. The other day, Krista put a piece of chicken in the vestibule on a stump. He found the chicken and ate it, which is really good for us, because that tells us that his abscess tooth issue is better, because he could chew a chicken bone. You know, raw chicken bone, again, is not a problem to feed to wolves. We manage, you know, again, with raw only diet. Cooked bones are the splinter problems. Raw bones are not a problem. So he was having trouble chewing, but that was obviously not an issue anymore. And then, you know, but the vision is the issue. So when people walk up, he doesn't recognize their voices. He doesn't recognize their smells. It's new smells, and he can't see very well. So that makes him panic. But Axel and Grayson, they panic because, again, I don't understand. Something happened in 2016. We didn't do the greatest job of socialization. So that is clearly on my mind. How do we make this happen? How do we socialize these pups? And we make sure that it's done for the best sake of the animals, as well as the best sake of the humans. So Rose asked, when I last visited, there was no current pack leader. Is that still the case? Yes. We do not see ourselves have a pack leader until we have a paired bond. We have wolves that think they're more dominant. When Bolts is standing next to Denali and has the medical pen to himself, he's more dominant. When Axel gets up, he acts more dominant. When I roll over Axel because he jumped on me, Grayson comes over and thinks he's more dominant. Denali just thinks, I don't care, I'm old. But if you've got a deer carcass, Denali thinks he's more dominant. So without any female pair bonding, we are a rudderless ship, and we just deal with it as best as we can. So questions about the, Michelle says that that's great news about the Ely lab. How quickly can you get results on hormone levels? That's great. Yes, so the partnership that we have, of course, we haven't done anything now because we're quarantined. I believe the turnaround was within 48 hours. So the references to my statement about this lab, that we were doing cortisol tests on Aiden before he died, and Luna, and trying to just get a protocol going. And then obviously we lost those two to cancer, and then we kind of stopped. And we are now at a point where we're quarantine, so we're not doing anything. But that is on my agenda. My goals is to formalize a plan. The other thing, if you recall, we were in a agreement prior to COVID-19. We were in agreement with the University of Brazil to do some studies on the pups about empathy and brain waves and how they expressed emotion. And so, we hope that, obviously, for everyone's sake, that, the health of the nation improves. But there's many exciting things on the horizon that we were going to do that we are on hold about, waiting to figure that out. So I am certain that we will keep you posted. It's one thing about the Wolf Center. We've always been, it is very transparent about actions, very transparent about management. We always have, I guess our best interest is in our members who support us, is to make sure our members know exactly what goes on. Every management decision we make is our counterpoint of risk assessment, cost benefit analysis. I mean, everything we do is about risk. Is this, going to benefit the pack? Is this detrimental to the pack? Is this detrimental to the individual? How is that going to be managed? So you can see here, kind of some interesting patterns here. That's Grayson taking the lead, and Axel following. Interesting. It has been Axel following, followed by Grayson. I always knew that Grayson had more into it about the idea of what's going on with his pack, what's going on in his world. We know that because he howls, lone howls more than anybody. So I think he's checking out, and without messing up, Gryzor's there. What was Gryzor's weight?
Pardon?
Did we get another weight on Gryzor?
No, we got like a half weight of.
Okay, so after this broadcast, I'm going to go out and have a chat with our Gryzor boy. He will go on the scale. He needs to go on the scale. He understands that. He's just toying with the staff. You can never trust a wolf to not be a wolf and be more creative. And I'll get a weight on him, and I'll put that in the wolf logs for this week. So if you're not familiar with our operation, we do wolf logs. Try to do it every week. We got a little bit behind here on the last couple of weeks, but it's at wolf.org. If you go to our wolves, you can see our webcams, which I'm featuring right now. This is the main exhibit webcam. You can see wolf logs. They go back in history, so you can see some of our gone but not forgotten wolves and get a sense of kind of what's going on there. So I am going to, in interest of keeping people on task, I'm going to wrap up some of these questions here. Again, I apologize that I've run them so long in the past. Obviously, anyone can leave any time, but I want to make sure it's something valuable for everybody. Got a little bit too scientific. I heard some of the critique from my last couple that I was a little bit too over the top on some things. I apologize. I am an instructor, and never apologize to my students that I will always put academic rigor first. So if my students are watching, I'm not apologizing for teaching, but this isn't the forum for me to be able to run those kinds of lectures. But it is the forum for my wolf research class. So if you guys are watching, remember, log into your assignments. But there's a question here. Do the wolves ever get any reptilian amphibian visitors? Oh my gosh, yes. We have the greatest frog and toad exhibit ever. There are times when you cannot think in this building when the mics are on because of frogs and toads that are calling. I love the spring tree frogs. When they come out, I mean, it is deafening in the building if the mics are on. They live in the pond. There's always an American toad with a long trill who's in the pump housing. He lives in the pump housing. I think he's kind of figured out that wolves can't get in there. So that's his little vestibule, is the pump housing. That's Axel doing a high tail posture towards Bolts coming over. Again, I worry about those two. Bolts is doing fine, but he did self-isolate most of the winter. Well, at least most of the winter dominance in January, February. So then Denelli's coming over, tail wagging, a lot of arousal, a little bit of excitement and a paw there. I'm watching the hackles because the hackles are going to tell me if this is going to be something that creates some redirection. So I'm hearing that. They're doing meds. Morning meds is always excitement. If you do watch our webcams, we do have people that are on site, obviously doing wolf care. So you're going to see them in the pen. Again, we are not advocating wolves as pets. I know that, you know, people see that and say, oh, it's just like a dog. I want to get me one. They're not. There's a lot of training that goes on to the wolf care staff. And you can see, again, the competition that can go on. Denali's such a bugger about taking his meds. He's going to drop them and he's going to lick all the meat off. And so Denali's on glucosamine. He's on gelactin supplement. He's on a vitamin. Bolts is also, any wolf over 6 years taking glucosamine supplements. The Arctics just get a vitamin. They're pretty healthy. So Kim asked, are the wolves on site still scheduled for physicals before the pups arrive? Yes, but the vet clinic is under quarantine, and they're not able to take us at the vet clinic. So we are talking to the, oh, that's not good. That was a lunge, aggressive run there on Grayson's part. So Grayson's taking lead and defending. This is a concern that I have, and then we get a little redirected aggression. So I'm going to stop here just for a second. Have the wolf care staff who should be watching that and should know to close the gate. Let me go tell them that. You guys close that gate? Thank you. All right. So basically, like I said, that's enough stimuli for the day. Yeah, and we talked about situational awareness all the time here. That means wolf care staff, when they see that ramp up, they got to respond and they got to know to close that gate. That's getting a little bit of directed aggression. We're here all day, so we'll be able to monitor that. Doesn't bother Gryzor at all. If I go to Gryzor, he's not worried about it. He's like, take it. I can handle it. I've been through worse. And look at him, just relaxed. He doesn't care. He will care that the door's closed though. That was his fun. But we got to balance out everything. Everything has risk assessment that ramped it up, and that's going to get bolts, the focus. This is the problem we deal with, and this is one of the reasons why, again, pups are an important part of what we're doing here. We're trying to do it safely. We're trying to do it the best of socialization, but having pups does two things. It increases prolactin hormone. Prolactin hormone is the threat, is that kind of the not threat display, it's the nurturing hormone. I'm watching threat display and speaking about this. So if we typically see it cycle in April into May, really high in June and July, and then wanes in August. And so it's naturally occurring. So we'll see it, but not like you see with puppies. If you've watched our highlights DVD or you've watched any of our birthday webinars, we always show you that piece when the puppies come to meet the adults at the fence. Everybody's salivating. Everybody's like excited. Shadow would regurgitate when the puppies were there. Aiden brought food to Luna. These pack leaders have that tendency to want to care, and it's stimulated by the puppies being on site and stimulated by that presence. So that's what pups will do. The second thing is pups are just so darn active. They're like running, they're jumping. There's a yawn from Denali. That could be a little stress indicator. So even though he was tail wagging, again, that might mean that he's got a little internal stress about this posturing that's going on with Axel. Nobody likes conflict. Wolves are great at conflict mitigators. That's what all this dominance is about. So nobody likes Axel ramped up. And Denali is one of those that says that same as well. So, but anyway, so as we get back in the pups are active, they're fun, they're rolling around, they're submissive, they're juveniles, they're doing crazy things. They're throwing birch bark up in the air, they're rolling over, they're appeasing the adults, they're licking their sides of their faces. And then one's a female. That female says, hey, you're looking kind of like somebody I want to hang with, and starts to have associative behavior. Next thing you know, instead of one animal being dominant, we got a pair. We got two to control the outbursts. Maybe it's Axel, maybe it's not. If it is not Axel, then we got two wolves that says, you know what, Axel, this behavior is not acceptable behavior. So that's something that I want to make sure that everyone understands. Having pups is about pack dynamics. Definitely bolts. This got too ramped up, and that's something for us to watch. So we're going to have to really keep an eye on that. The other thing I got to recognize is weather makes an impact. It is raining. It is cool. It is, just a great day for a wolf to be up. If this was, a 45-degree morning with sun, they'd be down, and this wouldn't have probably gotten the same response. So I also have to time things by weather components. And so that's something to kind of watch. The other thing is today's a feeding day. So they got fed on Tuesday. They had beaver. Now we feed Friday. So it's the post feeding or the pre-feeding day. Post feeding day, when you got a belly full, when you ate 15 pounds of meat and you're just laying around digesting food, you let things ride. And so that kind of happens. What am I looking for here? I'm looking for Bolts to come back without his tail tucked and be able to, again, associate with them, the behavior ramp down a little bit, and there he is. So he's timid by nature, but he's got to watch from behind. And that's, again, one of the other reasons why we leave this medical pen open. This is Bolts' sanctuary. Bolts goes in there, and then that chute is very narrow, and he can face them with having his back protected. So if he really has concern about it, he'll go in to the medical pen and the chute and then kind of control it. So that's something that we watch for. So lots going on. Wolf exhibit is, they're not dogs. If they were dogs, they'd be on my couch at home, and so would I. They're not dogs. Everything in their DNA is about being a wolf. Everything about how they mark, how they interact, how they adopt pups, how they communicate. It's all about being a wolf, and that's surviving in the wild. So that's kind of it for right now. People are commenting that they love the science, yep. So we'll save the science for my webinars. If you are a subscriber to our webinars, you will get a link. April 27th is my next scheduled webinar for my regular scheduled programming. That is Denali's 12th birthday in honor of Aiden. If you are not a subscriber and want to join, you can go to wolf.org at programs and you can register. It's $12 for members, $15 for non-members for a webinar. And again, keep in mind, I still have expenses. I am still, working for this organization, trying to make sure that I do revenue in a smart way, trying to make sure I do expenses and even in a smarter way. But you know what? I need chicken. I need beef. I need pork. I need roadkill. I need, a beaver trapping starts. I need to buy beaver. I mean, these are things that happen. So I will continue to do our 4 fee payment webinars that are on the schedule. We had 15 of them this year. So again, the next one's on April 27th if you want to join us. And then, let the science happen. I'll be Bill Nye the Science Guy on that session. So you can see Bolts using the chute there. That's why we keep that open. Again, that's why we have a roof over it. That's why we have panels on it. We need it ice-free. We need it smooth. There's water, heated water in there. If Bolts wanted to spend the night in there, he's got water. Actually, I've got a bucket of kibble in there right now in this cold weather. I want to make sure that this cold, wet weather, that especially Denali, our older wolf, has a free access to kibble. So that's a bucket in there. And then Bolts, like I said, just a little bit contentious going on right now. We've been dealing with that for a while. I am so looking forward to prolactin. If I could buy it, I've actually tried what's called DAP spray, dog appeasing pheromone spray. We tried that when we had a lot of tension in the early years. Didn't work all that well. So we will always try anything that we can to reduce the tensions. But again, we know the best thing we can do is manage a cohesive pack that is well socialized and that is not fear avoidant. And that I'll kind of end with that message. That is what we do. That is why we do wolf care 7 days a week. That is why we don't change it up for wolves. That's why we have core people. And let me just say this, 'cause I think there's a lot of misperception. We manage a socialized exhibit. That means we bottle feed in the neonate stage. We make sure that they're exposed to people. We make sure that the people that bottle feed them and the people that are around them in that really early critical stage of socialization are the people that are there for the rest of their lives, that manage them on that last day when they're laying there in the most incredible pain that they've experienced in their life, and they're trusting us enough to inject them, to treat them. That is the socialization. By no means does it make them tame. By no means does it make them safe. A socialized exhibit is the most challenging, the most risky exhibit, because you take away their fear of people and you're left with the social behavior of wolves. And as you can see here, even pack mates, even brothers who are raised together. This is not just a Bolts issue. Grayson has just about as much of an issue with Axel sometimes as Bolts does. This is about wolves who express and communicate their dominance through ritualized posturing, the growling, the jumping, the ride-ups, the snarling. This is all communication that avoids greater fighting. We've actually been very, very lucky with this pack. Without leadership, we've not had bite wounds. Early on, we had a little bit of grab bites on Denali. That's settled down a little bit. When we took Shadow out and we lost Maya, we had major medical issues. We had Gryzor's head had to be stitched 4 times from Denali and Gryzor having altercations. We're fortunate to say that the pack is not managing that way. And we are, again, hoping, as best as we can that we can hold this together. So Leanne there is doing scat. Again, scat bucket is our control. This is how, when wolves interact, she's not to look at them, no talking, no eye contact, no vocalization. She goes about her business. If a wolf approaches her, she turns around, blocks them. Yesterday, Axel was being real obnoxious to me. Was it yesterday or maybe it was Monday? I have no idea what day it is. But I just snapped that salad tongs, and I apologize if you use salad tongs and you watch this, you may not use them again for salad, but I snapped it close to his face to remind him, this is my bubble. This is my space. You need to stay away from my space. So with that said, I think we've been practicing social distancing with a scat bucket for a long time. I don't know how effective that would be in human categories, but I suppose if you walked around town with a scat bucket, people would probably cross to the other side of the street. So with that, I am going to sign off, and Kelly and Leanne are going to continue to do wolf care. So if you watch, I'm going to actually have one quick question. Laura asked, since there are only 4 of you interacting, do you anticipate any issues when the others are again permitted access to the pack? Will the length of absence cause the pack to be leery or mistrustful of them? Can you rotate any of the other staff in on occasion to help the pack remember them? That's an excellent question, Lori. I was thinking that on the way to work this morning. That is a risk. Certainly, we know that. But we do have some staff who manage with us. We do have some volunteers that are a little bit long distance who actually come once a month. And that seems to be okay. But it is an issue when they come back in. Novel stimuli create excitement. So it is an issue. If this runs for 3 months, I have concerns. But the good thing is we're getting them back in during the calmest time of the year. So if by chance we have to keep a quarantined issue, I'd rather do that than rotate, because if I rotate someone in, and let's say that they bring COVID into the lab, and then I got us 4 core, or we got more people that are at risk. And so again, keep in mind, risk assessment, benefit risk analysis. This is something that we have to do. But so let's say somebody's been out now since April, and I bring them back in July. July is heightened prolactin. It is hot. It is, oh yeah, that's right. I remember you. It's not an issue. What's interesting is if those people were bottle feeders, were met those wolves when they were young, those wolves remember years later. I've had personal experience with wolves that I had worked with that I gave away to another facility, and then I went to go see them. Oh, they remember. I mean, they remember years later. So I know that for a fact. But it is a concern. I would never do that if it was January. So in other words, if people were locked out until January, I wouldn't bring them back in. That's just too risky of a time. It's icy, it's too slippery. A wolf gets excited, jumps, greets, because the wolf's gonna test. That's what wolves do. They test each other, they test staff. So if they jump and they say, oh, I haven't seen you for a while, let me try to greet you, because they like to greet at the face. There's Axel doing a little bit of posturing there, and Kelly did the exact same thing. She just made the rake, a little rake sound, he backed off. Axel has to be reminded that he has rules. That's why we need a dominant female in here to remind him every day that he has rules, because he doesn't listen to any of us. So anyway, so that's kind of where we're at. We're dealing with it. 90% of wolf care is psychological. Physically, these animals are amazing. I would say that there's some really tremendous evidence of wild wolves that have healed. and had no issues with broken legs. I shouldn't say no issues. I'm sure it was painful, but we do some necropsies on some old wolves from the wild. I do as part of my job at the college. I do teach necropsies, and I've seen 10-year-old wolves that have busted ribs, and their jaw has rotted out from an abscess because they have the same kind of abscess that Gryzor had, and they didn't have the antibiotics that we feed Gryzor, that kind of thing. So those are challenges for us. I'm going to end here because I think I got all the questions, and I'm starting to ramble here. So I'm going to end with one thing I did get. So I'm going to go to my desktop. So again, apologize for, but I wanted to share this, and this is from protection. One of our local members, and I didn't want to give your name, Deb, so I'll just keep it at that. One of our local members lives north of Ely, and shared some great pictures from her deck of wolves in the wild. This was just last week, so you can see how much snow we have. And so kind of some cool pictures. They're social distancing. I thought that was pretty cool. And there is actually 4 wolves there. There's a black wolf that's kind of on the edge here. So black color phase like Luna. Less than 5% of the wolves in Minnesota are that black color phase. But this is a pack just kind of hanging out. And I'm going to share the video. Deb apologized because it was a little bit shaky because she's trying to zoom in with her camera. But just showing you just how much fun happens in spring. So spring fever is not just about wolf exhibits. And so this is what wolves do in the wild, is they just they're social carnivores. They're racing around, they're jumping at each other, they're lunging at each other. So that kind of excitement is going on in the woods right now. If you see us as humans, we're doing the same thing. We're lounging in the sun, we're hanging out. These are healthy looking wolves. This is great. I've not seen a lot of mange this year, and I know Shannon's on from the USGS, who's seeing wolves from the air. Can't really quite see health condition of wolves from the air, but not hearing a lot about mange. I think the wolves have had a pretty good winter. The deer, maybe not so much. Been a long winter for deer here in northern Minnesota. So with that said, I'm going to sign off. Thanks again for watching. I will create an archive, and I will try to be responsive. I'm working here today, and I'm going to try to check it out. Oh yeah, one more thing I forgot to say. Is I did have a, boy, my documents are here. There we go. We had some items that did not sell in the auction. So that did not get a bid. And so I wanted to share this with you, Chad, our communications director. I sent this document to him, and we haven't figured out where we're going to post it yet. We'll probably post it in the wolf logs. But if you wanted to still bid, if you did not get on the auction and bid, or you wanted to maybe take a look at some items. We had some items that did not sell, so we put them, Leanne put it together in a spreadsheet, or actually a Word document. And how we're going to manage this is, if you see an item, we put the value, we put what our opening bid was, we put the donor who donated it, and a description of the item. And we're going to do this first come, first serve. If you see something that you like and you want to bid on it, you're going to email me at curator@wolf.org. And some of it is our hand spun wolf hair. And remember, because of the wording on the Endangered Species Act, this is only allowed on Minnesota born wolves to be sold to Minnesota residents. So you can see the item. If you want to bid, or you're not going to bid, you're going to, if you want to send me an email and say, yep, I want this, I'm going to pay the asking price, which is the highlighted. Shows the value. If you want to make a higher donation, obviously that's great, but we're asking for at least the opening bid item. So we've got some wolf mittens. This is bolts and mohair mittens. We've got, again, this is the undercoat. So when we brush the wolves in the spring, we'll start getting this hair out of them so that they're not so hot laying up here in the woods. And then we've had some great wonderful weavers who have taken that and gone to the extra length to make these fabulous products for us. So I'll share it at wolf.org, and it's going to be under our wolves, wolf logs. It'll be a Word document. I think I can attach it that way. Otherwise, just email me and say, hey, I want to look at this. Here's a Luna reversible deer hide belt. this again, beautiful items that were left. We just had a lot of items this year, so not everything got bids. And so we wanted to share that with you. This will be a 1 week only kind of thing. So it'll be done by next Friday, just so that we can get back to normal and get things shedded out. Here's an interesting thing I'm going to end with. This plate, I didn't even notice this until right now. This plate was an image. This is Jedediah and Beelzebub from the 1989 litter. I have this print. It was made by Dan Smith. It was Dan. I have this print in my house. He painted this from the 1989 litter of Jedediah and Beelzebub. That is so cool. I didn't even notice that. I might have to put a bit on the plate. So anyways, that's it. I am really starting to ramble now, so you can tell I've been working a lot of hours. So thanks for watching. We are good to go. And anybody else who has questions, Shannon is saying she hasn't gotten any mange reports from citizens that were contributing to her winter study. So again, that's a great thing for wolves. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.